Welcome back to the AndroidAppTraining.com online course. At this point in the course, we've gotten our overviews of the components editor and the blocks editor, so it's actually time to create our first app. And the first app we're going to create is the first app that most people create in App Inventor. It's called Hello Purr. And the reason I'm actually going to use that one is because it does a great job of illustrating a few of the things that you can do in App Inventor in a really easy and straightforward way. So the first thing we need to do when we create our Hello Purr app is create new by clicking the new button there. And we'll call this Hello Purr. Remember, again, we're not using any spaces there, or you can use an underscore to denote a space. Like that. So we'll click OK. And it's going to take us directly to our components editor. So before we go over here and start dragging some components onto our components viewer, I'm actually going to click this area that says Screen 1. And what this allows us to do is, for starters, we can change the name of the app. So we'll change that to Hello Purr. And then when I click out over here, we'll see that the name of our app has changed up here. Now let me explain how this app works before we start dragging our components into the viewer. What we're going to do is add an image of a cat so that when we click on the cat, we get a meow sound. Sounds pretty simple, and it actually is pretty simple. So let's get started. First thing we're going to drag on here is a button because we want to submit an action, which is when this button is clicked, we want to hear a meow sound. And just for ease of use, we're going to actually drag a text box on here as well to give the user some instructions as to what to do. So now we see we have our button and we have our text box right here, and we can also see those on this side over here. So let's make sure our button is highlighted here. And what we're going to do is add an image. So again, on the properties section, you can change various things relating to the components in the viewer, and one of those is titled image. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on the image area here, and we'll see that we have none uploaded. Just go right down here and click the add button, and it will allow us to choose a file. So we'll choose a file, and I'm going to go with my image here. It's a ping image called kitty. Then we'll click OK, and what we'll see happen here is that we have an image of a kitty. Now, if you look closely, you can see that the text string text for button 1 shows up here. And that's because when you add a button to App Inventor, you can add images that make it, let's say, a shiny red button or a green button or something like that. Or in this case, an image of a kitty. If you were to add a button, you might want to add some text over the top so that users know what it is that's going to happen when they press that button. In this case, we're going to go over to the text area here, and we're just going to delete that. So when I click outside here, we'll see that that text is now gone, and we just have a nice clean image of our kitty. Next, we're going to use our text box. I'll highlight that here, and we're going to give the user an idea of what they're supposed to do here. So I want to actually tell the user via text to pet the kitty. And if we click outside here, we see pet the kitty shows up here. And we're going to make a couple of modifications to this to make it a little easier to use. Number one, we're going to change the font size, which is right here, and we'll just change it to 30. So now we see our font is quite a bit bigger there. And then here's a little introduction to some of the graphic layout you can do in App Inventor. If we go down to this area that has the width and height of the text box, we can go to the width, and we'll click in that area there that says automatic. And automatic just means that this text box is going to be only as big as the text we put in there. If you go to fill parent, the text box will go all the way across the screen, or you can choose to make it a certain number of pixels wide. We'll go ahead and fill the parent here. And now we see our text box has gone all the way to the right side, and what this allows us to do is then change the text alignment, which you can find here. We can do it on the right side, or we can do it in the center. And we'll leave it in the center because that looks a lot nicer. Okay, so far we have our image of a kitty, which remember is actually a button component that we drug over from the basic palette. And then we've got our instructions to pet the kitty using a text box. Now remember, the point of this app is to be able to click on the kitty and make a kitty sound. So what we need to do is actually add a sound component, which is in the media shelf here. And this is the sound component, as in sound effects. This player here is actually for longer audio files like a song. So we want just the sound effect, and we'll go ahead and click and drag that in here. And we'll see that it actually shows up down here under the non-visible components. And the reason for that is that we don't want users to click on the sound component to make the kitty sound. We want them to click on the button, which we've added a kitty image to. And there are various things that you'll throw onto this viewer here that actually show up under the non-visible components, such as the activity starter, which we'll certainly cover in great detail later on in the course. Okay, so this is all we need for our app in the components viewer here. And what I'm going to do now is actually start to rename some of the components that we have here. As you'll see when we get to the blocks editor and the next step, it can sometimes get a little confusing as to what each button does and what each sound effect is supposed to do. And as you start creating more complex apps, this will become more and more important, but I do want to show you how to do this right now. So we're going to go ahead and highlight button 1 and we'll rename it, and we'll call this kitty image. And I can just click OK, or I can hit the enter key and that will change the name for me. Now here's our text box. And I'm going to title that Pet the Kitty. And here's our sound effect, and we're going to rename that. We'll call it Meow Sound. Fair enough, that's exactly what it's going to be. So we've got our image in here, we've got our text box, and now what about the meow sound? We need to actually add our sound effect for that. So again, we can do that in one of two ways. We can go to what's called the source, and we can click and add, or we can go to the media component down here, and we'll click add, choose a file, and now we've got our meow sound right here, so we'll click OK. Now we see that meow sound shows up down here in the media section, and you can upload as many things as you want. But when we notice our meow sound is highlighted here, it's still not in the source. So if you would have uploaded it directly to the source, it would automatically fill in here as the source. But we need to choose it since we just put it in the media component. So we'll find our meow sound, we'll highlight it and click OK. Now we see that we've got it listed right here. Now we're going to go ahead and open up the blocks editor here. And remember, that's accessible by clicking the Open the Blocks Editor section right here. I'll click on this. And I'm using Google Chrome, which I highly recommend for using App Inventor. So we want to go ahead and keep this file. And we'll see it's downloading here. And I'll just click on that to open it up. And I'll come back once we have our blocks editor ready. All right, so our blocks editor is all set up and ready to go for us here. And we're going to go to the section called My Blocks, which is where you're going to spend most of your time, especially when you're first setting up your apps. Now remember, the point of this app is to make a meow sound using that sound effect that we have uploaded when we press the kitty button. And our kitty button is labeled kitty image, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you'll see a list of things here that you can do with the kitty button with an image in there. What we actually want to do is use this kitty image.click block. We'll drag that on here and we'll take a look. It says when the kitty image is clicked, do what? So now we need to figure out what we want the button to do when we click on it. We want it to make a meow sound. So let's go ahead and find our meow sound here. And you should be able to just sort of intuitively take a look at these and figure out which one you want to use. In this simple app, we're just going to use the meow sound.play because we want the meow sound to play. All right, so we've got when the kitty image is clicked, do play the meow sound. Simple enough, right? So we're going to start our emulator here, which you can find up in the upper right-hand corner. Click OK. And when we get to the opening screen of our emulator, remember we just click and drag this lock across the screen and it'll unlock. And then the next step is to connect to device. So we'll click on this and we see we have our emulator listed here. We'll click on that and I'll be right back when the emulator is connected. All right, so we've got our emulator up here and we see our image of the kitty, and we'll go ahead and pet the kitty. And you should hear a meow sound. So that's that, and the next step we're going to take in our online course is to actually expand this app a little bit and create your own little zoo. I made an app for my 2-year-old son in which he can press a bunch of images of animals and hear the actual sounds of the animals. It's, again, very simple, but we're going to get into some more advanced layout options and show you how to add multiple buttons and make this all work correctly. And again, if you want to learn how to create Android apps and you don't want to learn how to write the code that's involved behind them, check out our online App Inventor training at androidapptraining.com.